Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruh. Wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah. Wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa أصحابه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. أما بعد, this is our continuation, our Friday night class, and the explanation of Sahih Muslim. Shaykh Sahih Muslim, the Imam Nawawi, rahimahullah ta'ala, and some comments from Shaykh Muhammad Umar Falata, who was from the great African scholars from Ahlul Sunnah, rahimahullah ta'ala, by time. So I'm going to go back, mention some of the previous hadith without the chain, because we already mentioned the chain of narrators, just who was the Sahaba, and then bring us up to date to where we begin the next portion of the book. So we are in the Sahih of Imam Muslim rahimahullah ta'ala. So we are in the chapter of the virtues of the Quran. So remember, Nawawi mentions the Bab Fadail al-Qur'ani, the virtues of the Quran. Virtues here means the value, the blessings, the merit, the status, the position. All above is the meaning of Fadail. Blessing, virtue, status, merit, power, and like this. And the Imam know he said, وَمَا يَتَعَلَّقُ بِهِ, meaning there's more things that fall under the discussion of the virtues of Quran, but that's the main thing. What are the merits? What are the virtues? What are the special things? What are the values of the Quran? What are the things that are important about the Quran? And then the statement وَمَا تَعَلَّقُ بِهِ, and anything else that may come under the topic of the Quran itself, such as the recitation, how one should read, purifying the voice, such as reviewing the Quran, such as following the Quran, etc. This is what is meant by the statement وَمَا يَتَعَلَّقُ بِهِ. يَتَعَلَّقُ بِهِ, what is connected, and bihi means it, referring to the topic, the Quran and its virtues. So the hadith we took was on Aisha. We mentioned the chain up till we got to Aisha. So Aisha, we mentioned the hadith of Aisha where she said that Anna Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that she mentioned from the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, that sami'a rajulan yaqra'un al-Quran yani fil layl, that the Prophet heard a man reading the Quran at night. So Aisha reports that the Prophet heard a man reading the Quran at night. And so the Prophet, when he heard the man reading the Quran at night in the masjid, the Prophet, he said, فَقَالَ, so the Prophet said, responding to what he heard of that man reading the Quran, Yarhamahullah, Yarhamahullah. Yarhamahullah means may Allah shower His mercy upon that person. And I want to make a note here before we continue the hadith. The Prophet said, Yarhamahullah. He could have said, Rahimahullah. These are two different ways to say the same thing. This is an example of the way you say something can be different, has the same meaning. So he said, Yarhamahullah, may Allah have mercy on him. You could say Rahimahullah, may Allah show mercy. Same thing, same meaning. So the Prophet is making dua for the man with Yarhamahullah, may Allah have mercy on him. One of the times that normally people say that is when someone has died. When someone has passed away. From the Muslims, you normally say Rahimahullah, may Allah have mercy on him. Rahimahullah, may Allah have mercy on her. Rahimahumallah, may Allah have mercy on them. But here the Prophet is saying this about a man who he heard reading the Quran. He said, Yarhamahullah, may Allah show mercy upon this man. لَقَدْ أَذْكَرَنِي, because he reminded me of something. لَقَدْ أَذْكَرَنِي, he reminded me of something. So since he reminded the Prophet, number one, was grateful and made dua for the man. The Prophet was grateful that the man reminded him when he heard him reading the Quran in the masjid at night. It reminded the Prophet of something. So the first thing the Prophet did was made dua for the man. Yani, لَقَدْ أَذْكَرَنِي كَذَا وَكَذَا آيَةً. He reminded me of this ayat and that ayat, the Prophet said. So because the man recited something and it reminded the Prophet ﷺ of that ayat in that moment, he made dua for the man. He made dua for the man. The Prophet said, Kuntu asqattuha, Kuntu asqattuha, Yani min surah kada wa kada wa kada, from this place and this surah and that place and that surah. So the whole hadith of Salam, Aisha said that the Prophet heard a man reading the Quran in the masjid at nighttime. And when he heard it, the Prophet made dua for him, said, Yarhamahullah, laqad adhkarani, Yani, he reminded me, kuntu asqatu, Yani ayat kada wa kada wa kada. He reminded me of some ayat that I momentarily, it slipped my mind. So the Prophet made dua for that man. May Allah have mercy and show mercy to that man. Aisha also reported, and this is very important because the first narration she said, Sami'a, Yani, an Nabi Sallam, Sami'a rajulan, he heard a man. Now this wording she's going to mention in the other hadith is slightly different. It has a different meaning. Qalat, she said. Qalat. We want to say she said past tense, you say qalat. You put the ta on the end. Qalat. Sounds like a T when you say can't. Qalat. And you want to say a man or a male said something past, you said qala. So qala with the lam maftuh, mansub with the L sound in English, he said. And qalat, then that means she said. So the hadith said qalat, Aisha said, كان النبي صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم, that the Prophet, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, his companions, and the family members that are companions as well, upon them. استمعوا قراءة رجل في المسجد. He heard. So in the first hadith, Aisha said he heard, Sami'a. Here she said, Istami'u. Istami'u. Qira'a rajulan. He was listening to. So the ulama, and this is very important. Istami'u, this means you're actively listening. Istami'u. From the word sami'a. When you pray, you say, Sami'a Allah. Hudi man hamida, sami'a, to hear. Allahu, Allah, he heard and he hears. Some scholars say sami'a here means yani Allah answers. Liman hamida, whoever praises him whoever makes dua, Allah answers that dua, that praise. Here, sami'a an-nabi. He heard, and istami'a. Istami'a means he's actively listening. He's actively listening. Istami'u. So here, when someone istami'u, he's paying attention. He's actively engaged, trying to listen. As opposed to sami'a, he heard. You could have heard something and you were not focusing, trying to hear. It just caught you off guard and you said, wow, I heard that. But istami'u is you're trying to listen. So Aisha described them both. He heard a man in the masjid reading, and then perhaps the reason that she described it, sami'a and istami'u, because once the Prophet heard the man, then he tuned in. He heard the man reading in the masjid loud at night, Salat al-Layl, Qiyam al-Layl, Tahajjud, and then when he heard him, he said, Yarhamahullah, laqad adhkarani kuntu asqatu ayat kada wa kada wa kada. He just reminded me of something that slipped my mind from this ayat and that ayat. Now it's istami'u. Now he's listening. Like we would do. So this is one of the reasons that the wording, Aisha said, Kana Nabi Sallam, Yani sami'a rajulan yaqra'u al-Quran fi al-masjid في الليل وكذلك قالت أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم سمعوا قراءة رجلين. نعم. سمع, he heard. استمعوا, actively listening. You also have an Abdullah ibn Umar. An Abdullah ibn Umar. So you have one hadith from Aisha with two different wordings. And now you have Abdullah ibn Umar. Radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma. May Allah be pleased with him and his father. That he said that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Ibn Umar, he said that the Prophet sallam, he narrates min Rasulullah, qal, that the Prophet said, إنما مثل صاحب القرآن. Indeed, the example. إنما مثل صاحب القرآن. Verily, indeed, the example of the person of Quran. Person of Quran means the one that has Quran that he reads. كمثل الإبل المعقلة. He is like a camel. The example of the person with the Quran is like the example of a man who has a camel and he ties the camel up. And ahada alayha, if he's maintaining that camel, checking from time to time, making sure that the rope doesn't get loose so that the camel stays secure, amsakaha, then he will remain with that Quran. If that person holds on to his Quran by reviewing, like the man who ties his camel and he just doesn't leave the camel, he goes back and he checks from time to time. Same thing, you have Quran, you're reading, you're checking, making sure you didn't lose it, making sure you didn't change the way you read from what's right to wrong. Checking, you maintain, you review, you're busy with the Quran, like that man's busy with his camel, making sure that the knot is tight, that the camel is not pulling, and the rope is getting looser and looser until eventually, if he doesn't fasten it and he doesn't check, then that camel that's tied, he won't be able to maintain that camel. وَإِنْ يعني أطلقها, but if he unties the rope, and وَإِنْ أطلقها also carries the same meaning of يعني ahadaha. Ahadaha means you maintain it, you supervise it. So likewise, وَإِنْ أطلقها, from the word طلقا, if he lets it go, if he dispatches it, it also means if he just leaves it and he doesn't check, and the camel eventually pulls and gets loose, what's going to happen to that camel? dhahabat, he's going to go away. Likewise, if you don't tie down your Quran and you don't maintain it, you don't review it, you don't read it, you don't busy yourself with it, the Quran is going to leave. Just like the example that Ibn Umar gave, the example of the camel. If the camel is tied and you maintain the tie, you supervise it, that's how you maintain and keep your Quran. But if you don't show a care for the camel and the camel gets loose, or you untie him and let him wander, the same way, if you don't tie the Quran, you don't maintain the Quran, you don't supervise your Quran by reading and being busy with it and reading and studying it and spending time with it, then the Quran will, dhahabat, it will leave, you will lose your Quran. Also, one of the narrations said, قال حدثنا أنس, Anas he mentioned. So you have Aisha, Abdullah ibn Umar, radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma, and now Anas. These three we already took with the full chain and all benefits that we wanted to bring. This is just a review as we move forward. And Ibn Ayyad, Anas mentioned Ibn Ayyad. And Musa ibn Uqba. So let me go back. Anas, this is, I'm sorry, it's not Anas the companion. That's a mistake. And Anas, Ibn Malik. Anas ibn Malik. Anas ibn Malik and Ibn Ayyad. Anas ibn Malik, Imam Malik ibn Anas. I should say his name right, not Anas ibn Malik. Anas ibn Malik is the companion. Malik ibn Anas is Imam, Malik. So, and Malik ibn Anas. This is a hadith, one of the chains in Sahih Muslim. Malik ibn Anas, Abi Ayyad, and Nafi'. Nafi' Mawla ibn Umar. Nafi' Mawla ibn Umar. So Ibn Umar had a servant. His name is Nafi'. And Imam Malik ibn Anas narrates from Nafi'. And Nafi' narrates straight from Abdullah ibn Umar. So in this narration you have Imam Malik ibn Anas and Abi Ayyad and Mada Nafi'. That's one way the chain goes. And then you have another chain that is mentioned, Musa ibn Uqba. Musa ibn Uqba, he also narrates on Nafi'. So not only Abi Ayyad narrates on Nafi', but Musa ibn Uqba. So let's imagine you have Nafi' here. And you have two, like a triangle. On the right is Abi Ayyad narrating on Nafi' at the top, going this way. And you have Musa ibn Uqba narrating on Nafi', going this way on the left, the top. So both of them narrate on Nafi', and then Nafi' narrates on Ibn Umar, and then Ibn Umar narrates on the Prophet. So the triangle goes like this. Abi Ayyad, for example, to the right, and Musa ibn Uqba to the left, and at the top of the triangle, who are they narrating on? Nafi', Mawla ibn Umar. And then Nafi' ibn Umar, Nafi' Mawla ibn Umar, the servant of Ibn Umar, Nafi' narrates on Ibn Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. The Shaykh Shaykh Muhammad Hassan Umar Falata, he said, كل هذا النافع. Both these chains come from the chain of Imam Malik ibn Anas to the chain of Nafi', who narrated from Ibn Umar. The difference is one of them, Imam Malik narrates from Abi Ayyad, and then Abi Ayyad got it from Nafi', and the other one, Imam Malik narrates from his Shaykh Musa ibn Uqba, and Musa ibn Uqba got it from Nafi, who got it from Ibn Umar. So both Abi Ayyad and Musa ibn Uqba, they are two of the shuyukh of Imam Malik ibn Anas, and all of them, both chains, they narrate on Nafi radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, who is the Mawla of Ibn Umar. He is Tabi' Nafi rahimahullah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. Sheikh says, An Ibn Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma, the hadith of Imam Malik ibn Anas. And that is, what is the hadith, the wording about Ibn Umar, who said the example of a person with this Quran is like the example of a camel that you tie down. If you maintain the tie, then the camel, you'll be able to maintain and hold on to the camel. And if you don't maintain the tie, or moreover, you don't tie him to be in the first place, or you untie him, then just like the camel is going to leave, your Quran is going to leave. This narration is the narration of Ibn Umar, who comes from the chain of Nafi, who narrated it. Nafi narrated it from Ibn Umar, and who got it from Ibn Umar? Nafi. And who got it from Nafi? Musa ibn Uqba. And then another chain, Abi Ayyad got it from Nafi. And who got it from both Musa ibn Uqba and Abi Ayyad and Malik ibn Anas radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. The difference between, and this is a very important point, the narration of Abi Ayyad and Musa ibn Uqba. Remember, both of them are the shuyukh. They are the two Shaykh of Imam Malik, Abi Ayyad and Musa ibn Uqba. And they both, Musa ibn Uqba and Abi Ayyad, narrate from their Shaykh, who was Nafi. And Nafi narrates from his Shaykh, who's the companion Ibn Umar. The difference between the two wordings with regards to what Abi Ayyad mentioned and Musa ibn Uqba, they are the same about the camel and tying it down until you get to this additional point. Musa ibn Uqba, he adds, he said, if the person does not want to forget his Quran, then that person can read, that person can maintain his Quran, that person can read his Quran bil-layli wan-nahar, bil-layli wan-nahar. Because in the narration, the Prophet heard a man reading the Quran in the nighttime. And that's because the man was reading the Quran loud in the masjid. So loud that the Prophet heard him in his apartment next door. So the Prophet, when he heard him, and the man reminded him of things that the Prophet forgot momentarily, remember, he made dua for the man. May Allah have mercy on that man. That's at nighttime. So all the hadith mention the way to hold on to your Quran, pray in the night. That's the first thing you get from this. But Musa ibn Uqba, he mentioned, in order for a person not to forget or lose his Quran, let him read it layl wan-nahar. Let him be busy with it, whether it be the night or the day. That's the difference between the narration of Musa ibn Uqba and Nafi, and the narration, the difference between the narration Abi Ayyad and Nafi, that Musa ibn Uqba added the daytime. He added the issue of reading the Quran in the daytime is a way to hold on to your Quran anytime that you're busy. It said, وَإِذَا لَمْ يَكُنْ بِهِ, and if a person cannot or didn't read in the night, Nasiya, if the person didn't read because he forgot to read, he overslept, he was tired, then that person can read in the day just like he wanted to read in the night. So this is an extra benefit from the narration of Musa ibn Uqba, and this shows you why would Imam Muslim bring this chain, that chain, this chain, the same hadith, different reporters. Why did he take the time to do that? Is it wasting time? Is it necessity? Does it make sense? Of course it's necessity. Because the main reason he's bringing all of these different chain is to make sure that we know and understand it's authentically reported on the Prophet. The more ways that you report it from authentic sources, it makes the issue something that's certain in the mind of the one who hears it. No doubt it's authentic. But one of the other benefits you get, besides having different ways to attest of the authenticity of the narration, it also shows you the different additional wordings, such as the narration, the wording that Musa ibn Uqba is in, where he included daytime reading. One would think the only way I'm going to hold him to my Quran, if this is the only narration he read, was I have to get up and pray in the night. Maybe praying in the night is difficult for him. Maybe it's impossible. He has a problem with sleeping. He sleeps, and he most of the time he's waking up, Fajr is out, right on the tail end, or maybe he makes Fajr, but he can't get up and pray in the night. Maybe he has a night job, so the night job won't allow him, but he can pray Fajr on the job. So how is that person going to hold on to his Quran, the daytime? And if a person mixes between praying in the night and reading in the day, then he has more of a possibility that he would hold on, maintain his Quran than losing his Quran. And this is the benefit of taking the narration which Musa ibn Uqba is in, Nafi, that he included the daytime, Layl and Nahar, reading the day and the night as a way to hold on ahad of the Quran, to tie down your Quran. The Imam, he says, call Imam Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala. He continues, he said, Bab, Fadal al-Quran, still with the subject matter of the virtue of the Quran, وَمَا تَعَلُّقُ بِهِ, whatever is relevant to the Quran. He said, Amr bidha'atul Quran, the command to hold on to your Quran. So that means that we've been commanded, anything you learn of the Quran, don't lose it. It's a command. And the Prophet said that he forgot such and such. And it's okay to say, Usituha. Usituha is a little bit different in Arabic than to say Nasituha. If you say Nusituha, that means really that you forgot it and you don't have it at all. But if you say Usituha, you put the alif in the beginning, that means you forgot it momentarily. And that's the difference between Nasituha and Usituha. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala blames the people for forgetting him in this life. And so here, Shaykh Umar Falata is going to bring some qawaid, some benefits, principles from the hadith that we heard. Number one, Jawaz Rafa'a Sawt bil Quran. This shows you the permissibility of raising the voice with the Quran. Because the man was reading to the extent that the Prophet heard him next door in his apartment, and the Prophet was able to listen and be reminded. So this shows you it's okay to raise your voice with Quran in the night when you're praying. Yani Jawaz Raf'a Sawti بالقراءة بالليل. It's okay to raise the voice while reading the Quran in the night. And the Shaykh is going to give two conditions. And this is talking about fil masjid, in the masjid. And there the Shaykh said, wala kirahata fi, and there's no blame in that or anything wrong if a person was to read Quran out loud in the masjid. And here the Shaykh is saying bilayl, nighttime, but this means anytime, day or night. The Shaykh said, وَهَذَا الدَّلِيل, this is the proof of that, this hadith. He said that person was reading Quran in the masjid in this manner, and the Prophet did not tell him don't do that. So that's how we know it's permissible. Had he been reading the Quran loud in the masjid, the Prophet heard it, he would have stopped him if it was wrong. He would know in the narration the Prophet heard him and went and he rebuked him, but the Prophet didn't. Rather, he made dua for him because it reminded him of something that he forgot momentarily or temporarily, and the Prophet was, because of the recitation, actively listening. So that's how you know it's permissible. The Shaykh says to read the Quran out loud in the masjid in the nighttime, and we're going to add or daytime. Now, the Shaykh said, وَظَهَرُ أَنَّ النَّبِيَّ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ أَقَرَّ بِهَذَا أَقَرَّ. He said, and what is apparent from this narration, another principle we can take away from this hadith and lesson, is that the Prophet agreed with the man doing that. So he didn't stop him, which shows you it's permissible. And the Prophet agreed by not saying something. أَقَرَّ بِهَا نَعْمَ النَّبِيُّ صَلَّى. It shows you silent approval, which is one of the types of sunnah. Sunnati takririya, where you agree. The Prophet, if he agrees to something by allowing you to do it, it becomes sunnah, takririya, by agreeing, by not saying something to you, it's like an agreement. It becomes sunnah by silent approval. So this Shaykh is mentioned here, one of the principles we learn from this hadith. Number one is permissible. Rafa'a sawt bi qira'at al-Quran, fi al-masjid bil-layl. That you can read your Quran, you can recite the book of Allah, and in the masjid with the raised voice at night. Number two, Salam lam yankiru alayh. Prophet did not disapprove or stop the man. And number three, Akara biha and Nabi Sallam, the Prophet agreed with that, approved it by not saying something to the man Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Haythu athna alayhi, the Shaykh said, when the Prophet Sallam praised the man. How did he praise the man? He said, Rahimallah, Rahimallah alayhi, or Yarhamahullah, Rahimallah alayhi. That's a praise, a dua and a praise at the same time. Now, Imam Nawawi, he says, Shaykh Umar Falata says, La kira'ata, la kira'ata fi. There's no disapproving of this act, Imam Nawawi says. So as long as the person is not So Imam Nawawi says to this issue, La kirahata fi itlam yani yudhi yani ahadan. So as long as he doesn't bother somebody with that Quran, that he's reading it out loud, then he can do it. So this shows you one of the conditions that you should not be disturbing anybody. After speaking, the Prophet was not disturbed as he heard it, and then he was actively listening. And the Prophet didn't go and disapprove, tell him to lower his recitation. So this shows you condition number one, yani, that Imam Nawawi mentions. So as long as it doesn't cause any adha ali ahad, it doesn't cause any adha, means any type of annoyance or disturbance. He said, وَلَا تَعَرَّضَ الرِّيَاءُ, and the person is not doing it to show off. وَالْإِعْجَابُ, and he's not doing it because he's amazed with his own recitation. Here, Imam Nawawi mentioned three things. Number one, it's permissible, as from the Prophet's hadith itself proves that you can raise the voice with reading the Quran in the masjid at night. But number one, no one should be disturbed. If brothers are trying to sleep, you're reading loud, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, then that condition would prevent you from raising your voice because people are trying to sleep. Number two, if a person is doing it to show off, he never reads the Quran like that, but people around, he wants people to say, oh wow, mashallah, brother, you have nice recitation of riya'u. قراءة القرآن نوع من الإبادة بل هو من أجل نوع من الإبادة. It's from the most loftiest types of ibadah. Can do it to show off. Number three, if the person has ujub, تعجب بنفسه, he is amazed with his recitation. I know I sound good, Allah musta'an. So this, Shaykh has mentioned, Imam Nawawi, three conditions with regards to raising the voice. And then the Prophet and the Bukhari and Muslim and others. There's a narration where the Prophet was walking at night during his time, and he heard Abu Bakr praying in the night. Walked past Abu Bakr's house, Abu Bakr was praying in the night. And he walked past Umar's house, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and he heard him praying in the night. The next day the Prophet said to Abu Bakr Siddiq, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, why were you praying so low with your voice? Loud enough for me to hear you, but it was low. Why were you praying with that level of volume? Abu Bakr Siddiq said, because I didn't want to disturb Asma, his daughter Asma, and his wife and the children in the next room. So the Prophet told him, raise your voice a little bit more. That was too low. Then he asked Umar ibn al-Khattab al-Faruq, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, why were you reading with such a loud voice? Why were you reading with such a high volume? And Umar said, I want to keep the shayateen away. That's why I'm reading so loud. And the Prophet said, lower it a little bit. It was too loud. Meaning the issue of disturbing people is the first thing Imam Nawawi mentioned. So this, Shaykh Umar mentioned, rahimahullah ta'ala, from the points of Imam Nawawi, with regards to this hadith. The Shaykh Umar Falata said لأن الرياء والعجب, يعني someone who's doing the action because he's amazed with himself, or he wants others to see him and be amazed. يفسد العمل. This is something that will ruin the quality of that action. It would ruin the fact that Allah would accept it if it was not full of those two things, showing off and self-conceitedness. And it changes. The Shaykh said, يتحول يعني كونه من الجائز إلى المحرم. This would change the whole idea from being okay to read it out loud, the Quran, to recite it in the masjid. It would change the ruling from being okay to not being okay. Why? Because you're doing it to show off, or because of self-conceitedness. Look how something could be changed because of the intention of the person. Allah musta'an. And the Shaykh said, وَنَحْوِ ذَلِكَ, and other than that. Now, Imam Nawawa said, وَفِي قَوَائِدْ اسْتَنْبَطَ مِنْ هَذَا hadith. And there are some other principles to be extracted from this hadith. Imam Nawawi, he mentions. He said, the dua liman asaba min jihati khayra, that you make dua for the individual who you receive from that person something good. If you receive something from a person of good, this hadith teaches you that you should make dua for that person. It's one of the things you istinbat, that you take away, or that you deduce, or that you abstract from this hadith, that anytime someone is responsible for some good coming to you, you make dua for them. You make dua for them. Now, Prophet did that when he said, Rahimallahu, yani, may Allah have mercy upon him, yani, laqad, yani, dhakarani, laqad dhakarani, kuntu asqatu ayati kada wa kada, that he reminded me of something that I momentarily forgot, yani, from the Quran. So he made dua for the men. So Imam Nawawi said, from the things you can extract from this hadith, one of the rules, one of the principles, if someone is responsible for some good reaching or coming to you, make dua for that person. And that's because that man was responsible for reminding the Prophet of an ayah, some part of the Quran that was not on the Prophet's mind at that time. So that is why the Prophet made dua for that man. The Shaykh Salati usiuha, that which the Prophet forgot, yani, temporarily, momentarily. And again, nasitu and usiuha, two different ibarat. If you say nasitu, that means you forgot it totally. But if you say usiuha, you didn't forget it, it was in the back of your mind, but when you heard it, it reminded you. And we know that sometime, Allahu musta'an, if you're in the grocery store or in a place where there's some music, you're not thinking about the song and you didn't forget it totally. But when you hear it, it reminds you when you used to hear that growing up. And you may have been stuck for Allah, shake your head or start saying it because it's reminding you that of which you forgot momentarily, temporarily, and not that you forgot it totally, and then it reminded you now. and that one who reminded the Prophet of the ayah, Imam Nawawi said, yastahaqqu yani thana. He is due a praise. So anytime that you remind a person or the vehicle that is responsible for bringing some good to a person, that's after Tabarak wa Ta'ala, then yani they are due some type of praise. Kama qala Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, yashkur nas la yashkur Allah. Whoever does not thank the people does not thank Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. Or as the Prophet mentioned, when the man gave a bad sadaqah, the Prophet called the people to give for the sake of Allah. And the man sent a broken down a mule. So the Prophet said to him, that person who brought the mule was sick, old, weak. The Prophet said, go tell that person who sent this, La barakallahu fihi. May Allah not bless him. So the person went back, who was the one responsible for gathering the charity, bringing it to the Prophet. To that person, the Prophet said, may you not be blessed. May Allah not give you any reward or blessing for giving this old, broken down animal. When the man heard that, he sent another animal. He sent another donkey that was healthy, strong, not sick. And then the Prophet said, tell that man, Barakallahu fi. May Allah bless him. And another wording, Burika alayh. May he have abundance of blessings. So this again proves that anytime some good comes to you or reaches you, then you should make dua for the person. You should make dua for that person, as Imam Nawawi mentioned. He said, وَإِن لَمْ يَقْصِدْ ذَلِكَ. Even if that person didn't mean for good to reach you, but it reached you. SubhanAllah. This is the blessing and the wisdom of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala given us ulama. Look at the different extractions that the Imam Nawawi is bringing from this hadith, that maybe some scholars came after him or before may not have been able to pull these out. Allah Akbar. He said, that person, even if he didn't mean or intend to give you or bless you with some khair, to be a vehicle for some good to you, still, if it reaches you through that person, yastahaq al-du'a wa thana. He has the right, she has the right to be praised, and or moreover that you make dua for that person. And of course the man didn't intend for the message to hear him. If so, this would be a riya'u, or that the Prophet was there and liked to hear him reading the Quran. How many times Rasulullah was there with a companion such as Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, or Ubay bin Ka'b, or Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, who had beautiful voices. Salam Mola, not Salam, Mu'adh ibn Jabal, Mu'adh ibn Jabal. And for Salam, was there and they didn't know it. And when they looked up and seen the Prophet, they stopped out of shyness, out of not wanting to show off. So this, the man, of course, did not intend on reminding the Prophet, being a vehicle of that good to the Prophet, but still the Prophet made dua for him. That's why Imam Nawawi said, even if the person didn't aim or intend to remind the Prophet or be a vehicle of some khair, which was a reminder of an ayah that, slipped the Prophet's mind momentarily, or was not on his mind at that time, but he knew it, still he reminded the Prophet. And the Prophet made dua for that man. And inshallah, Tabarak wa Ta'ala, we'll stop it. So,